If you enjoyed the channel and our video content and would like to support us, you can do this in a couple of ways. You can sign up to our Patreon site, which is a monthly subscription to one of our 4 tiers, each giving you something different from early access interviews up to exclusive unseen footage. There's also the option of a one-off donation via PayPal, which allows you the option to donate an amount of your choice. Both options really help to keep this channel going and to continue putting out regular content for you good folk. So please take a look at aircrewinterview.tv/donate, and I thank you in advance. Thank you and enjoy. So John, then you managed to go onto the Jaguar. How did this come about?
Yes, when I was posted from 3 Squadron in Germany, I went on to the Jag, and it was pretty much just starting up. I think it had been running about 6 months by the time I left the Harrier Force. And there was a certain part of me that had a few frights in the Harrier, and 2 engines sounded pretty good. And also I quite liked the idea of instructing, so I went to Lossiemouth on the Jag and and operated out of there. Because I was a weapons instructor anyway, and I was also an instrument flying instructor and so on, all that was almost nodded through. We did do bits and bobs, but pretty quick I was back on the line. Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the Jag OCU. I like the Jag. People talk about it, saying it's underpowered, it's this and that and the other. It's a nice airplane to fly, and it was a nice airplane to fly at low level. In the early days, the nav system worked quite well, but I don't know what happened to it, but it all went pear-shaped. And we eventually lost a competition with the Americans and on the A7. And I remember the American guy came up to me in the bar and he said, "Don't feel sad." He said, "If it's anything like our Air Force, you've been beaten by us, you'll get some new kit." And sure enough, they did.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah, so Jag, I liked it. Nice airplane, nice at low level. Took most of the curvature of the Earth to take off, but that's the story. It was more powerful than people think, and it was very nice at low level. I wouldn't take on an F-16 with it, to be honest.
No, I don't think so. I mean, was it nice having reheat for the first time?
Yeah, yes, but you needed it because in dry power, it was. The idea of the Jag was that you'd have dry power, not very much, but it was enough to keep you whizzing around at low level. If you needed to use in short bursts the reheat, then you had the reheat, and it was a big jump between the two.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was a really big jump. It was a nice airplane to fly. I liked it, and it was a little bit more modern than the Harrier. The moving mat was a bit bigger, and the other thing is, it was my first instructional tour, and I loved it. I just really enjoyed it.
So how did you go on to be an instructor? I thought you'd be an instructor after you've been on like a frontline squadron as such, or did you go straight in as an instructor?
No, well, there was those who went to Central Flying School, and proper instructors, as it were, and they had the, 4-month course or 6-month course, and they did all that stuff. But I could instruct, being given a short course with my background, and I could then teach all these other things. But what I couldn't do was send people solo, stuff like that.
Got you.
I couldn't do that. That had to be done by a qualified flying instructor. I enjoyed it. So I just find the whole thing fascinating. It was a nice airplane to fly, and in Scotland, which is even better, just wonderful.
That landscape must have been amazing, low level in the Jag. I mean, can't beat it probably.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing about it was it had a lot more range than the Harrier.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So, it was a good airplane. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And what was the cockpit like? Did it feel like a jump coming from the Harrier?
A jump?
Like a jump and like avionics, the layout. Did it seem better?
It was a bigger cockpit. And therefore things were a bit more spaced out. Yeah, it was a nice enough cockpit. It was bigger to sit in and everything else. So, and it did the job. It was one of the, was it better than the Harrier? I don't know, but possibly just something new. And the moving map was nicer and various bits and pieces, and of course it carried more. So yeah.
And did the moving map actually work? As I've heard, it wasn't that great from other pilots, or was it quite reliable?
When I first got on it, it was entirely reliable, and it was a much nicer map than the one in the Harrier. But as time went by, excuse me, they kept doing updates, and every update they got, it got worse and worse and worse, it seemed to me. And not only the map, but the weapon aiming system.
Oh, really?
Which is why we lost to the Americans when we did that, because they had spent more than the whole Jaguar force on just their weapon aiming system.
Wow.
Whereas ours was in a bad state at that point, and when they did the competition trips with these A7s, which we did on one occasion, many went off no inertial system at all, just hard sight, because it had dumped or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Very unreliable. And as a result of that, we lost the competition against the US Marine Corps, and quite heavily, frankly, and because they just went out with this brilliant kit and just thumped everything. and we made a big effort, a very successful effort, basically flying with an iron sight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very old school.
Yeah, yeah. So, as I say, what happened was that the Americans, we had a big party afterwards, and one of the guys came to me and he said, best thing that could happen to you, he said, if it's anything like our Navy, he said, you'll get some new kit pretty sharply, having been beaten by us. And sure enough,
you did.
We did.
So he's right.
He was right.
So I'm going to post a picture up here now. There's a picture you sent me of a Jag with 8,000 pound bombs. Was that actually real bombs? Because people are saying the fiberglass and stuff like that. Was
No.
Actually fully 8,000 pounds?
Full.
Wow.
8,000 pounds. Yeah, it wouldn't go very far with that lot. But no, they were the deal. Yeah, no, it wasn't plastic. They were the real deal. You know, you're then talking going on internal fuel.
Yeah, of course, yeah, no drop tanks.
And with huge drag. So, yeah, but it could do it. Yeah.
Did you fly, obviously you mentioned there with the Americans, did you fly on any other large exercises with the Jag?
No, not really, because it was a training unit. And two things happened. One, it was a training unit, and when I joined, I just joined as a Joe. And then one day, the boss, who actually was my boss many occasions, so I was very glad about it, Fred Truern, great man, and he said, could I pop into the office? I thought, you know what it's like? You think, God, what have I done wrong? You know, headmaster's office, oh, you know, should I put some books down the back? And he said, got some good news for you. I said, what's that? And he said, by the way, not to be told anybody, you're going to be promoted and take over the squadron.
Wow. So you weren't expecting that at all?
No, not at all. And the thing about it, that was, a little bit later than that, I met a senior officer. He was more senior to me. And this guy, I loved his idea. He was going to be chief of the air staff, which he very nearly did, as it turns out. But, and so what he used to do was if he saw a well-written, of course in those days everything's written.
Of course.
Right. So if he saw a well-written paper or something, he'd make a copy and put it in this big chest he had. And he would have this huge chest with all these things, and anytime somebody said, you know, whatever he was then, or in command or something, you know, can you write me a paper on so and so? You know, and then filter all this and off he'd go. I wish I had the forethought for any. I did. When Fred told me that, I was absolutely stunned. I just wasn't expecting it. I wasn't thinking about it. You know, yeah. And so I took over. It was about 3 months later. He told me in about the March or something, and I took over in the July. And yeah, interesting because you think, God, I wasn't the youngest in the outfit, but there were a lot of people older than me there, so I sort of felt, Christ, you know,
yeah.
You know, I thought, Christ. Well, one of those older people, when I walked into the squadron the first day with all my stripes on and everything, he said, "Good morning, sir," you know, and chatted away, and I thought, oh, thank God for that. I just felt, you know, it's
Welcome, yeah.
welcome,
Yeah.
and he could be forgiven, this guy. He was a wonderful guy, but because he was specialist aircrew, he was not going anywhere himself. He could be forgiven for being, well, morning, you know, but no, he said it quite deliberately. And I thought, wow, thanks, mate.
Yeah, a bit of relief there, I can imagine, yeah.
But yeah, and then I ran the squadron for, well, it was about 4 years, 3 or 4 years.
Wow. So you probably have many, but can you share a few stories from your time on the Jag?
Jag, actually, not really. You know, for me, problem-free.
So that's a good thing, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Because every airplane I flew, there was something that happened.
You're always getting in trouble somewhere.
No, it was fairly straightforward. And the nice thing about it was we persuaded the powers that be that we would do sort of air-to-air gunnery, for example, which really wasn't our remit.
Yeah,
but
of course.
it is the sport of kings.
Yes.
It is the sport of kings. And it was actually quite an accurate gun too. It was a 20mm Mauser.
All right.
And yeah, and the sighting system and things were not wonderful, but pretty accurate, a lot more accurate.
Did the job.
Did the job.
Yeah.
So that was great. We dropped 1,000-pounders, and I can remember. I can't remember now why I was able to do it as an instructor, but anyway, whatever the reason was. Well, I dropped 4,000-pounders on the range, and so we pull on a pull up, you know, pull up like that, you know, boom, off you go, and then as soon as it's gone, you go
Really?
inverted, and they're there, and they're doing this.
Oh my God.
Falling away from you, and yeah, that was great. I enjoyed that. But then one guy, he was going to be the squadron station commander, at one of the stations in Germany. And I said, look, when you get to such and such, I can't remember, such and such a point, let go, because then it's beyond the capability of the system. And he went, all right, okay. But he got immersed in this, and he was hanging on to this because it's all automatic. It all comes off automatically.
Right.
Right. So he's hanging on to the button, and pull. I said, have you let go? What? Have you let go? And there's a bit of this going. Next thing goes, boom. Oh, shit. And I just had the vision of these 4,000-pounders hurtling into Tain village, which they never would have done. Never. But I don't know why. I just thought,
yeah, in your head.
I thought,
yeah,
that's going to go into Tain village, those 4,000-pounders. And it was something like 70 at 6, which was a brilliant score for 4,000 pounders.
That's really good.
Anyway, yeah, so we had fun. It was a good airplane. I don't remember particularly. I had an engine failure once, a fire, which wasn't very nice.
But I think, yeah, like you say, like it's probably what you want, eventful, less stuff.
Well, yes. Well, the thing about that, I've got to say, when I went on to the Jag, it had 2 engines. And one of the things which didn't actually help you very much, in the Harrier, the engine was right behind you, bellowing, and you knew, and so if you wanted 83%, you went, you know, whatever it was. They're way down the back, you can't hear them. So you've got to look at the gauges, and it took a while for me to get round to that.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
it makes sense, yeah.
took a while.
So did you go supersonic in the Jag?
You could go supersonic in the air test, and so I used to do the air tests on it, and it was tricky to get it to go supersonic.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, so because what happened was you as long as you got to about 40 grand or something, then it wasn't too bad. But if you were a lower level, you then had to sort of roll it inverted to get the nose down.
Oh, yeah.
It would go supersonic level. It was a quick aeroplane, very quick, at low level. Well, I'll tell you a thing at the. Oh no, sorry, that was a Tornado. Yeah, so you get the nose going down, but of course you're going into thicker air, so your Mach number it was all a bit tricky to actually get it to go. So I think you're supposed to, I can't remember now, in the air test, 1.2?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Something in that region. And it was quite tricky to get it.
I thought it'd be quite easy to get the Jag supersonic, to be honest.
Yeah, you would think so, yeah. Yeah. Even the Tornado, in similar circumstances, that took a while to.
Right.
It goes supersonic, but yeah, it was tricky. Oh, well, we'll talk about Tornado later. Yeah. No, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed instructing. I enjoyed the tour. I like the airplane. Yes, everybody says it takes the circumference of the Earth to get airborne and stuff like this. But as I discovered later on the Jag, because I went to the Indian Staff College, and they had Jags. So when we were doing the attack profiles and so on, suddenly I realised what a good airplane the Jag was, because it carried a lot and went a long way for a small airplane.
Because it was originally going to be a trainer, wasn't it?
Yes.
The Jag, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they had MiGs, they had MiG-21s and things, which,
of course, yeah.
You know, they just went about tuppence halfpenny and had to come home. It was like a lightning. And everybody wanted the Jag. I suddenly realised that, because we had groups going around, and so people saying, "Look, I want some Jags." And everybody was saying, "I want some Jags," because it carried a lot of bombs a long way.
Well, you proved that by showing that photo to me, £1,000.
Yes, yeah. I'm not sure you go very far with
no,
£8,000.
probably not.
Yeah, so yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a great airplane.
So let's talk about your time on Tornado. How did you feel getting posted to the jet?
Well, I was on Staff College course in India at this point, more of that anon. And the reason for that was my father had been in India when I was born, and he was the deputy manager of a tea plantation. And so that was the sort of link. And until I was 5, and I want you to get your handkerchiefs out. At 5, I was sent home to England to boarding school. Right, you now know why I'm like this. Actually, I had a ball. I loved it, wherever this place was. But anyway, that's by the way. Yeah, so that was the link. And so they called me up and said, because of that link, would you like to go to Indian Staff College? And I thought, no, not really. I'd rather go to the States if you don't mind, or anywhere. But anyway, so while I was on the course there, I got promoted on the course again. What? I wasn't expecting it at all. You know, I am light years away from the man who's got a cupboard full of letters and all this. Even then, and they said, you're going to get a 101 Squadron Tornadoes. Oh, bloody hell! I was just amazed. It turned out not to be 101. It turned out to be 27. But yeah. So that's how I got onto the Tornado, and then I came back, and the course was about a year away, actually, something like that. So I went to strike for a bit and sat around there and got bored, and they said, well, we've got nothing for you. And then somebody said, I'll tell you what, I've got some friends at Boscombe Down. Why don't you go down there and see if you can catch them flying?
Yeah, right.
And so off I went to Boscombe Down, and they're all my mates there, I knew them all. And I did the one thing nobody else, apart from them, would do: inverted spinning in a Hunter.
You're asking for it.
Yeah, well, I said to Russ Peart, is a very good friend from years ago. By the way, he's a good guy to get hold of if you want, because not only did he do this, he flew in Oman, did a lot of stuff there, and he's flown MiGs in Pakistan, and he's done all this sort of business. So if you can get hold of him, I don't know if he'd say anything.
I'll have a look.
Yeah, Russ Peart. And at the same time, I flew the Phantom. The only time I ever flew it was in the back, but that was that. But I did eventually fly in the Lightning.
Did you? You got your trip?
Because the boss of the outfit, Robin Hargreaves, I think his name was, he said, oh, do you fancy a trip in a Lightning? He said, because I've only got a bit, to do of this air test. And I said, all I want to do is go double supersonic. I just want to go twice the speed of sound. He said, right, off we go. Yep.
So you got your Mach 2 badge then?
I got the Mach 2 badge. That was brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
Brilliant stuff.
So it was great going there, because it was all this sort of funny stuff you do in places like that, Boscombe Down, which you wouldn't do anywhere else. I did the course at Cottesmore and I don't know if you know, if people have told you in the past, but there were 3 squadrons. One run by a German, one by Italian. Yeah. So I was on the German. Schumacher was his name. Never forget it, because of obvious reasons. Yeah. He was a brilliant bloke. And so we did the course. And the thing about it was, when you look at the Tornado, I just think it looks so good.
It does, doesn't it?
It looks brilliant, and it's big. Oh, well, relatively big compared to what I've flown. And it's got kit that works. And you know, it was brilliant, and I really enjoyed the course. And don't forget, I was, you know, I'd had a fair bit of flying by then, so I was probably had 3,500 hours or something like that, of which you're only getting 200 a year or less. So you know,
of course.
And so, to be honest, I felt fairly confident, and it was a nice aeroplane to fly. So we did that, and then we went to Honington and did the weapons course, and then went on to the Squadron. And the thing about that was, it was the third squadron to form. We had one aeroplane, and of course, with HASs, I don't know how many HASs, 3 were built. All the rest were not built. Nothing was built.
Right.
It was like being in a builder's yard at this point. And off I went to there. I had my flight commanders, a couple of flight commanders with me, and a few of the bodies. And then we started flying. And what happened was, I went across to the other side of the airport and said to the warrant officer, he said, "Oh, sir, oh, thank God you're here. You know, we've been sitting around doing nothing and everything." I said, "It's all right, it's all going to change." I said, "Have you got an aircraft ready for it?" "Oh, yeah," he said, "We've got an aircraft ready for aircraft, we're waiting for you." I said, "Right, first thing this afternoon." "This afternoon?" "Yes, let's get going.
Let's go."
Let's go. And so he said, "Right, okay, so we'll do that." And I said, "And the other thing is, I want one of those HASs which is built, cleaned out, and I want to come into that HAS."
Nice.
And I didn't think anything of that. I thought that was fairly straightforward. And he told me later, he said, "I was so relieved when you said all that. We were starting at long last."
Really?
Yeah. And he said, we'd been there for ages, everybody faffing about and, you know, not doing anything. And all of a sudden, let's go.
Jumped into gear.
And so that was that. And so I did an air test with my senior flight commander, Tom Bradley, brilliant guy. And we did the air test. Funnily enough, you asked about supersonic flight. That was one of them. And I can't remember if this may have had pylons on it. It struggled to go supersonic. That's
Did it really?
Yeah. And it would, at low level, it would do. When I did the course, you did a supersonic run at 2,000 feet, and with this German navigator instructor in the back. And the thing I remember about that was he said, "Right, sweep the wings." We cleared for the supersonic run. 750, I think, was the speed from memory. Yeah,
that's about right, yeah.
Yes. That was the limit for Air Force use. And we went 450, slammed the burners in, and in 16 seconds, we were doing 750.
No way, really?
Oh, it's unbelievable. It just rocketed forward. And it was extremely quick and very smooth. You know, it just went through the mark without.
I thought it's like a Cadillac almost. It's like quite comfy and
it's
very
quite
stable.
comfy. It's quite quiet. The only thing I think that's quieter was the Hunter T7. That was a really quiet airplane.
I thought they'd be quite loud.
No, the single seater was. But yeah, it was a lovely airplane. And then we only had that one airplane. So from that moment onwards, it was just building up, and more airplanes coming in. And you know, and then there's another squadron down the road trying to do much the same. They're a bit ahead of me, and so they're trying to get spares and bits.
What squadron was that?
6-1, 7th Squadron. Yes. Say no more. Anyway, no, it was a joke. So it was tough to get spares and everything else, but within 6 months we had to be combat ready. And the other thing about that was it was nuclear.
Yeah, the nuclear role. I was going to ask you, like, what was that like? Or was there a lot more training involved for that role?
Yes. Now, all the guys who came from the Buccaneer had done that. But we had ex-Lightning people, had me, never done it. A number of the navigators came from the V-Force. Now, some may or may not have done that, but in any event, not in this way. And so, it was a lot to think about on that side. And I remember once, we had 2 first tourists who were brilliant, by the way, both of these guys. One was killed, sadly, many years later. But anyway, 2 of them, 21, 22, pilot navigator, something like that. And on this exercise, they were the pair to be called upon, if necessary, to drop the nuke.
That age? Wow.
Yeah, and I thought, 21, 22, they could be starting World War III. It just sort of
A lot of pressure there.
lot of pressure, really. I don't think so. I think most people thought, well, it isn't actually happening, but so it was. Yeah, there was, and there was one conversation I did have with every single person that came through, and I interviewed everybody, and I said, look, mate, nuclear. So if you've got any issue about it, now is the time to say. You cannot go and on the day say I'm not going, but not least of which you'll be shot. Now you say no. Yes.
Yeah.
They had 2 policemen in every HAS. They checked your documentation. Not normally, obviously, if you're doing a nuclear thing, and check your documentation, and then they walk around with you.
Oh, they follow you?
Yeah, they follow you around.
Right.
Now, if you do anything to damage the airplane, they're authorised to shoot you. So, hard rules.
So the eyes are on constantly while you're doing your walk.
Yeah. And they are not there. They're not there to be nice. Let's put it that way. The whole thing is done grim-faced and everything.
So it's not like, oh, hiya mate, how are you doing? It's
no,
down to business.
No, because it's nuclear. No, we didn't actually have a QRA role per se all the time. But when you did exercises, obviously, you used to have 2 aircraft ready to go all the time. And they had to be started up and gone in next to nothing. There was a lot of argument about it, but we were at one end of the airfield and 617 were at the other end. And long story short, we eventually got it so that we could take off on that runway and they could take off on that runway. Because my argument was, they're taking off that way where they're going, we are going in the opposite direction in reheat. So you've lost, I don't know, pounds and pounds or kilograms of fuel, just that and doing a turn, which I don't want to do because we're going to be short of fuel. Plus or minus 10 seconds was the time on target time. And the rules were harsh. Well, they weren't harsh. There was no leeway. You had to get 100% on all the tests. And if you didn't, there was trouble at mill.
Okay, right.
Yes. And that's where the guys in the Buccaneer, that was what was nice about this squadron. I was able to call on people who'd done this sort of thing before. Others hadn't, but they had. And so they would cut, and I'd say, would you mind telling everybody all about this and how to do it? And then that's good for them. And they like that, to prepare everything. And so we did have people to help us within the squadron. The one person that didn't like any of them was single seat pilot, boss. Particularly the navigators. No, they didn't like that.
No.
But they got used to it. The thing about the Tornado, people forget, it is not a big Phantom. That's what everybody, or not even a big Phantom. It's not a Phantom. It is quicker. It's got much better kit in it, and it does this nuclear roll. American stuff. It works. It's Texas Instruments.
Yeah.
So, the nuclear roll was one thing, and we spent a lot of time on it, a lot of time. But then conventional stuff also, and then we spent a lot of time on aircraft recognition, tank recognition and all that sort of stuff. And then the other big bit, which is actually even bigger, was terrain following.
Oh yeah, the TFR, yeah.
Yes. Now at that point it was cleared initially to 500 feet and 450 knots, I think, something along those lines. And the way we approached it was we would do the whole sortie in the day at 500 feet, right? And then we'll then go at night and probably do it at 800 feet and frighten ourselves absolutely frightened. And off we went. Now, but we soon learned, because when I did my first trip, what the navigator did was he just sort of went from hilltop to hilltop because it was easy on the map, but we didn't need anything. And to do a particular route. Well, that was the worst thing to do, because what happened was in the Tornado, if you got a very high hill, the auto throttle would then stop at the top because it won't go into reheat on its own. Sometimes it ran out of power because it wasn't that much power if it was a steep hill. And then you come down the other side, and then suddenly both throttles go wee, and you hurtle down, absolute blackness. The engines wound down, and it was, but
It worked.
It worked, and the other thing was, the deal was, anybody unhappy for any reason, call pull out, and that's what you did. And so with that caveat, slowly we got doing it. And by the time I left, we went to Goose Bay, and I love this, I've got to say, it's my highlight of a story. We're in the Met briefing, weather, absolute crap, lashing down and everything else. And so the boss stands up, Canadian, and says, right lads, into the bar, you know, black flag. But, excuse me. Yes? We want to go flying. What? Weather's crap. Yeah, but we can fly in this. Oh, right, okay. And so off we went, and it was horrible. And off we went. It was 300 feet. We were clear to 300 feet. And 450, I think, or maybe even 500. I can't remember now. But so off we went, and a lot of it, probably 2/3 of it, was in cloud, even at 300 feet.
Wow.
And then every once in a while a rock would flash by, and oh Christ. And I just thought of the irony of it all, that we went round this, and it was quite anxiety making in a way, just seeing suddenly rocks flying by. And of course the other thing is that the autothrottle is going up and down a lot, and if you put it on hard ride, which is what we did, it would, you know, push down and pull up. And you had to, because otherwise it would sail over things. So we did that, and I just thought that was absolutely wonderful. When we got in the bar, the irony of it was they were all pissed out their heads. We were sober, they were in flying suits and hadn't turned a wheel all day. Because of Air Force rules, we had to go back in our blues before going into the bar.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the good thing was, the squadron commander of the German squadron that was there, F4E squadron, big Prussian guy, big moustache, the whole works. Oh, right, you bloody Brits, he shouted. And of course he's pissed out of his head. But the important thing was, he said, you don't buy a beer in here tonight. If you can go and fly in that sort of shit. He said, I've got the Tornado now. I understand what it's about.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
Free drinks all night then.
Yeah.
But John, can you share some stories you have from your time flying the Tornado?
Well, I'll get round the ejection. Should we get that out of the way? That was fairly traumatic. That's quite a long story. Again, same. We took off. We had some targets up north. Nice weather at Goose Bay. This is a Goose Bay, and nice weather. Little bit of wind, and we went off to the targets. And the F4E said, "Well, we'll defend then." And so it was great. You know, we all whizzed about and had a great time and came back into the circuit. And I was the first in, excuse me, and so I broke into the circuit, and I didn't actually see this, I just felt something wasn't quite right. So I looked down in the cockpit, and one of the switches, if you want to call it that, it was sort of like a push switch, was lit up saying that there was a control malfunction somehow. And I thought, oh. And the trick was just to put it back in again and see what happens, and it was fine. But then I noticed that the flaps hadn't come out. I had slats out, but no flap. Oh, all right. Well, no big deal. Well, you know, if we have to land like that, that's okay. Yeah, just a bit quicker. So I thought, well, I'll tell you what, we'll go round. So I called air traffic and I said, look, we've got a flap problem. We'll try and sort it so you can get everybody else in to land. And the thing was, it was 27 wing, so forward wing. But of course, if the flaps come out and the wings are anything other than 27, the flaps go into the fuselage.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it has to be forward. So I thought, right, well, that's the problem. I say micro switch, probably a bit more complicated than that. But I was slamming the wing like this, trying to force it in. No, just wouldn't have any of it. So, all right, okay, we'll do a circuit and we'll land. Luckily for me, I decided to do a very big circuit to give myself plenty of time, and it needed it without flap. Anyway, round we come. Navigator, lovely lad, but he starts to, boss, speed. I said, yeah, I know, but we're in a turn with no flap, so I'm having to keep the speed up. Anyway, so we come down the approach, that's fine, and then the aircraft just went and rocked slightly. Turbulence, I don't know what. And I instinctively looked down because that can happen if one of the switches comes out. Nope, it's fine. So I thought, oh right. I thought no, it's Dutch rolling, because I've seen that in a Hunter. And I said it's because of the flap configuration. It's not quite right. Let's get out of here. We'll land quicker next time. Well, by the time I got both heaters in, I had full control one way, airplanes the other way, and we're only just off the floor. And I'd always said to myself, if I'm given two options, one of which is death, I'm off Martin Baker. So, Martin Baker, pull the handle, I wait, nothing happens, and then eventually, whoosh, we're off. Now, the navigator goes first, 0.6 of a second, 0.6 of a second. That time I was waiting was 0.6 of a second. Now, my wife didn't flash before me, but it extended dramatically. Anyway, so out I go, and I could feel all the straps undoing and everything else, and I was on my back and whatever. Chute opened, and oh Christ, thank God for the bloody chute opening. And then I thought, oh, side left, side right, too late. Hit the ground. Oh Christ. And what happened actually was the chute went out of the airplane, and instead of sort of doing a parabola or something like that, it sort of went out and then went like that. And so my chute opened in a couple of swings and I was hit the floor. So anyway, thud, oh thank God for that. But while I'm sitting there, I watched my airplane like this.
Oh, you saw it, did you really?
Climbing away in a vertical climb, and I'm going, this could be tricky to talk my way out of it. And then I thought, tell you what, I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm alive. I don't give a shit. And the reason was because I had both reheats in. All that weight had gone out of the nose, so the nose was just lifted up because it suddenly became tail heavy.
So it was in reheat when you were watching it go up?
Yeah. Well, I'd left it. I've just left it wherever.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And so I watched it, and eventually I saw it in the distance, and it just sort of went like that and hit the ground inverted, and that was that. And I went to see my nav, and I was trying to think of something jocular to say, and he said, "What the bloody hell happened there then?" Oh right, okay.
You're fine.
And I broke my collarbone, and I think it was because of the oxygen bottle was there. And when you eject like that, you bend right over.
Oh, right.
You are pulled back in straps and things, and I think it just broke the collarbone. But that was fun.
And how long before you were back flying again?
2 months.
Is that it?
2 or 3 months.
Were you scared going back flying?
No.
You were just eager to get back up?
No. I don't know how long this will go on, but none of these things that happened to me bothered me. I slept like a babe. No, I was at the time of the ejection. I was a bit shaky. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But apart from that, no. But I paid for it later.
So, John, overall, did you enjoy your time on the Tornado?
I absolutely loved every second of it. There were a lot of other things we did. We did the Queen's Birthday Fly Pass, for example. And I didn't ask for it. Somebody came up and said, "You're doing the Queen's Birthday Fly Pass," and it was some of us, some of 9 Squadron and some of 617. So we're a group together. Wonderful honour. I'm a great royalist, so that was just fantastic. They had a film taken from a helicopter of the run, and nice. We were able to see that, and I sat and watched it because I have heard of people getting, I think it's the Strand, which just parallel and getting it wrong and things. And you think, how can you do that, bloody palace? Actually, now I'm up there,
you can understand.
Yeah, I can understand. So we practiced it. We did the fly past, and my mother was in the crowd, and she said, "You were late." I said, "Do you know?" Well, in those days, of course, it was all stopwatches. I said, "There are 9 airplanes." So it was a Diamond 9. There are 9 airplanes, 2 people in each. That number of stopwatches going. I said, "I'll tell you what. I'll agree to 1 second late, because that's what I reckoned I was."
You were late. I can't believe it.
And that was off her little Mickey Mouse watch. But the other nice thing was, somehow it came about where I realised that Heathrow was suppressed while we were doing this thing, and so I rang up the boss of Heathrow and I said, "This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. If I was to delay 20 seconds, could we fly over your airport?" He said, "Yes!"
Really?
I couldn't believe it. He said that. He was so...
In formation?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I did, and of course they're all suppressed, all the airplanes on the ground, because it's too close. And so we did this thing, and I just, literally 20, 30 seconds, and then just flew Diamond 9 over Heathrow.
That's incredible.
Yes.
But while we wrap up here, have you got any stories you can share with us that we haven't already heard?
We did. We went to Thumb Rate. That was good because that was a bit of a sales pitch, and the Saudis eventually bought it, so must have worked.
That must have worked, yeah.
But that was great to work at Thumb Rate with the Jaguars, and they're almost all my mates, so I know all these guys in the SOAF. Yeah, we went there. It just makes me smile though. We go there. We got there. And we landed, and the weather wasn't very nice. It was just foggy. That was all. And the prince, because they're all princes,
of course,
came up and said, "All right, we're going for lunch." So we went for lunch in this sumptuous Mercedes, and he took us around the Squadron after we'd had lunch. Wow, different world.
Really?
All marble. The briefing room was like a cinema theatre. It was huge, absolutely huge. And whereas we all had, I think we probably did have colour photographs of people and things, but it was close. Whereas they did have massive colour photographs of all the pilots on their outfit and all this other stuff. It was a different world. Yeah, I guess it worked because they bought them in the end.
They did indeed, yeah.
I did a wheels up in a Harrier, right. And what happened was I came off an air test. This was on 3 Squadron, and put the gear down, wouldn't come down. Oh, all right. I'll have a little bit of faffing about, see if I can get it, a bit of yawing and things, see if I can get it down. I couldn't get it down, so I thought, all right, that's all right. I've got the, the emergency system, which, oh, nothing. You sure? Nothing. And so I eventually I sort of got myself down on fuel. I flew past the tower, and I said, "Is anything out? I've got no lights or anything." And they said, "Yes, the one thing that's out is the speed brake." And so I now had the speed brake out and no wheels. So in the end, what happened was the guy in the tower said, "Tell you what, fly by again, hover in front of the tower, I'll get a ruler out and I'll put it from your gun pod to the brake, and that will give you the proper landing thing," which he did. We landed absolutely fine. The only thing that happened with that was that when I thought, right, I'll get out now, because it landed and it was fine, but it was doing a lot of creaking and hissing and that sort of, is this thing going to catch fire? So I was fairly keen to get out. And anyway, so I did that, and I went to pull the hood. Hood jammed. Oh, Christ. And what it was the hood was linked to a step. And of course, we're now on the ground. So when you pull the hood back, the step, instead of going like that all the way down so you can get in the airplane, it just went down about that far. So I couldn't open the canopy. Oh, God. So I did all I could do, and that was to explode the canopy, because it's got a detonating cord all the way around. That was quite an implosion.
I can imagine.
Because when you're inside a bang like that, I was quite shaken. And then in the back of my neck, which I still got it, is all this molten lead.
Oh, really?
From the detonating cord.
Wow.
And because I was like this, I was trying to hunker down, and it's still all in the back of my neck.
Wow. So, John, what's your favourite aircraft you've flown?
I thought you might ask me that. I saw one of your videos with a test pilot, and he said he flew the Jaguar and it was horrible until he realised what it was for. And when he did that, it wasn't horrible. It was a good airplane. So I like the Jaguar. The Tornado was immensely capable. You could do anything, day or night. It was just extraordinary. And I think I've got to say the Harrier though in the end. The hovering, where we came into it, We were cock a hoop. I mean, you know, having this wonderful airplane, this massive engine.
I mean, you've had an amazing career, but overall, did you enjoy your RAF career?
Absolutely loved it, every minute. And I just find it sad, really, now that I can't say to somebody, that's a great career, because, not least of which, it takes 8 years from zero to get to the squadron. That's madness.
That is madness, yeah.
A complete madness.
Yeah.
And so I can't say to anybody, like my grandson, for example, who might be interested, no, I wouldn't do it, because 8 years of your life just faffing and, yes, some training. One thing I did do once was fly in the Typhoon simulator.
Nice.
And I now realise what that airplane's about. It was immense.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Anyway, that's by the by.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Well, John, thanks very much for coming on the show and just sharing a bit of your story.
All right. You're welcome.